The video opens with a soft piano playing in the background as the narrator's voice fades in, warm and steady, the kind of tone that instantly tells viewers that what they are about to watch is not just another Got Talent audition, but a story that touches the heart. This channel has always brought stories that celebrate kindness, humanity, and courage, and today, it brings something deeply meaningful, something that carries both a nation's pride and a child's voice rising on one of the world's biggest stages. The camera glides across the huge America's Got Talent arena as bright lights sweep over the cheering audience. The judges settle into their seats, ready for another night of incredible performances. In the middle sits Simon Cowell, adjusting his microphone, completely unaware that the next few minutes will stir emotions in him in a way he didn't expect. Backstage stands a young Filipino boy, around 11 or 12 years old, clutching a small Philippine flag folded neatly in his hands. His name is Miguel, a kid from Davao, who grew up in a small house with thin walls, a leaky roof, and a mother who worked 2 jobs just so he could go to school. His father was an OFW who had spent years abroad, working in harsh heat and long nights so that his family could have a future with more than struggle. Miguel wasn't a child of luxury. He didn't grow up with expensive toys or birthday parties at fancy restaurants. But he grew up with something else. He grew up with love, discipline, and the constant reminder from his parents that wherever he goes, he must carry the honor of being Filipino. Every morning before school, he would hear his father's voice in his mind saying, "Remember Anik, we don't raise our voices to be loud. We raise them to be respectful. And whatever you do, always honor who you are." Miguel had a dream, not of wealth or fame, but of doing something meaningful, something that would make his parents smile, something that would make his country proud. Ever since he watched AGT on a tiny borrowed TV at his neighbor's house, he imagined himself on that giant stage. But not just to sing a high note or perform a trick. He wanted to use his voice for something sacred, something many people take for granted but Filipinos hold close to their hearts. He wanted to sing Lupang Hinirang, the Philippine national anthem, on the world stage. People told him it was impossible. Some laughed, some discouraged him, saying national anthems don't belong on talent shows, that judges wouldn't understand, that the world wouldn't care. But he held on to a quiet belief that when something is done with sincerity, respect, and love, the world listens. Now he was here, standing in line backstage, holding his small flag so tightly that his fingers turned pale. A producer approached him and crouched down to his level. "Are you ready, Miguel?" The boy swallowed, then nodded. "Yes, sir. What are you singing today?" Miguel looked down at the folded flag and whispered, "Our national anthem. I want to honor my country." The producer's eyebrows lifted with surprise. It wasn't a typical choice. But something in Miguel's eyes, something more mature than his age, told him that this child wasn't doing this for show. He was doing it for meaning. When Miguel finally walked onto the stage, the arena fell into a hush. His small footsteps echoed against the polished floor. He stood at the center, shoulders straight but trembling slightly. Simon Cowell leaned forward, studying him with curiosity. "Hello, young man, what's your name?" "My name is Miguel Santos, sir." "And where are you from, Miguel?" "From the Philippines, sir." The audience cheered, and Miguel smiled nervously. Simon smiled back. "What will you be doing for us today?" Miguel took a deep breath. "I came here to honor my country and my people. I will be singing Lupang Hinirang, the national anthem of the Philippines." There was a brief silence. It wasn't the answer anyone expected. Even the judges glanced at each other. Singing a national anthem on a global competition was rare, almost unheard of. It was risky, it could be misunderstood, but there was something in his tone, humble, sincere, deeply respectful, that made everyone listen a little closer. Simon's expression softened. "That's very brave of you, Miguel. Whenever you're ready." Miguel nodded. He unfolded the small Philippine flag and placed it gently by his heart. The crowd quieted, sensing that something special was about to happen. Even the lights dimmed slightly, as though the entire arena was preparing to show respect. Then the first note left his lips. "Ang bayan kong Filipinos." His voice was pure and steady, glowing with emotion. He didn't try to show off. He didn't run high notes just to impress. He sang with dignity, like a child who understood the weight of the words more than many adults do. As he continued, something extraordinary happened. The room grew silent, not the silence of boredom, but the silence of reverence, the kind of stillness that only appears when people feel something stirring inside them. Some Filipino Americans in the audience stood instinctively, placing their hands on their chests. Tears welled up in their eyes as memories of home, family, and roots washed over them. Others, unfamiliar with the language, still felt the passion behind every syllable. Backstage, staff members paused. Some had never heard the anthem before, yet something about the way Miguel sang it made them stop and listen. On the judges' panel, Simon's expression changed completely. His eyes softened, his jaw loosened, and he stared at the boy with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. He had heard thousands of auditions, singers, dancers, magicians, but there was something different here. Something raw, something honest. Miguel's voice rose with each line, not in loudness but in pride. This was no longer just a performance. This was a child representing millions, bringing his nation's heart to a global stage without fear, without hesitation. When he reached the final lines, his voice didn't shake, it didn't falter. It soared, aming lagaya na pag may mga api, ang mamate ng dahil sayo. The final note lingered gently in the air before dissolving into silence. For a moment, no one moved. No one clapped. The arena was frozen, as if the whole world took a deep breath at the same time. Then the applause came, rising, swelling, exploding into a roar that shook the hall. People stood, cheering, wiping their eyes. Some waved Philippine flags, others simply held their hearts. Simon Cowell remained seated for a moment, his chest rising slowly. He blinked hard, visibly emotional. He wasn't a man who cried often, and certainly not easily, but this performance pierced him. Not because of vocal range or technical brilliance, but because of sincerity, respect, and courage. Miguel looked overwhelmed by the reaction. Tears filled his own eyes, but he quickly wiped them, remembering his father's words, "Stand tall, Anak, even when you cry." Simon finally stood up, giving him a slow, meaningful standing ovation. When the applause softened, Simon leaned toward his microphone. "Miguel, that was one of the most respectful, powerful performances I have ever seen on this stage." Simon's voice cracked slightly as he continued speaking, something rare for him, something that made the audience lean in even more. He paused for a moment, pressing his lips together before he spoke again. "I have watched thousands of people walk onto this stage, but very few remind us that this world is still full of honor. What you just did wasn't just singing. You reminded everyone here what it means to love where you came from." Miguel lowered his head humbly, his small hands still resting over his heart where the flag had been moments earlier. He wasn't used to compliments, he was used to struggle, hard work, and silence. Hearing praise this big felt unreal, almost dreamlike. The other judges added their thoughts, each one touched in a different way. One said that she didn't understand the language but felt every note. Another said she had goosebumps the entire time and had never seen an anthem performed with such purity. Another mentioned that Miguel's bravery to stand there and honor his country with no hesitation was something the world needed to see more of. But something deeper was happening inside Simon, something he didn't fully express on stage. He saw in Miguel a reflection of all the people who come to new countries with values, respect, and a fierce love for home. He saw humility in its purest form. And he saw the kind of sincerity that is often lost in a world chasing fame. Miguel wasn't chasing fame, he was honoring his land, his family, and his roots. Miguel wiped his eyes again, overwhelmed. "Thank you, sirs and ma'ams. I just wanted to make my parents and my country proud." The crowd erupted again, touched by his humility. It wasn't scripted, rehearsed, or designed to win sympathy. It was simply honest, exactly who he was. Simon leaned forward. "Miguel, before we vote, I want to ask you something. Why did you choose this song? Why today? Why here?" Miguel looked down for a moment, then took a deep breath. "My father worked far away from home for many years. He always told me that no matter where he was, the Philippines was in his heart. He said, when you go to a big place, when you meet big people, don't forget who you are. I wanted to show him that I listened." "Where is he now?" Simon asked gently. Miguel's lips trembled. "He passed away last year, sir." A gasp traveled through the audience. Even the cameras seemed to pause. Simon's eyes softened deeply as he slowly sat back down, visibly moved. "I'm so sorry, Miguel. I truly am." "It's okay, sir." Miguel wiped another tear. "I know he is watching. I know he'd be happy to see me sing for our country." The camera cut to audience members crying silently. A Filipino nurse in the audience covered her mouth as tears rolled down her cheeks. A Filipino father with his little daughter hugged her tightly, whispering something only she could hear. Even those who weren't Filipino felt the weight of the child's love, his grief, and his strength. Simon cleared his throat, trying to keep his voice steady. Well, if your father could see what you just did, he would be extremely proud. And so is everyone here tonight. Then, in a rare moment of vulnerability, Simon placed his hand on his chest, copying the gesture Miguel had done earlier with the flag. The crowd reacted emotionally, cheering louder, moved by the respect he was showing. The other judges quickly cast their votes. 4 yeses, loud and confident, each one echoing like a celebration. But Simon wasn't done. He looked at Miguel with a strange expression, a mix of admiration and something like longing for the kind of purity and meaning he had just witnessed. Miguel, I want to tell you something. In all my years here, I've learned one thing. Talent is everywhere, but heart, real heart, is rare. And you brought heart today. You brought honor. You brought pride. You brought something the world needs. The crowd cheered again, but Simon wasn't looking at them. He was looking only at the boy, and the boy was looking only at him, like they were having a silent conversation of respect. Just then, something unexpected happened. A woman from the production team walked onto the stage holding a small envelope. She whispered something to Terry Crews, who raised his eyebrows in surprise. He stepped forward with the envelope in his hand. Hold on, Terry said into his microphone, turning to the judge's table. Simon, you might want to see this. The audience murmured with curiosity. Miguel looked confused, wiping his face, still trying to calm down from the overwhelming reaction he had already received. Terry handed the envelope to Simon. This was delivered earlier, meant for this moment. Simon looked puzzled. He opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a small letter. He unfolded it, his face tightening slightly as he read. Then his expression softened in a way no one had seen before. He turned the letter toward Miguel and asked gently, Miguel, did your father send this? Miguel's eyes widened. I don't know, sir. Simon looked down at the letter again and began to read it aloud quietly, his voice shaking ever so slightly. To my son, if you are reading this, it means you reached the stage you always dreamed of. I may not be there beside you, but I want you to know that you already made me proud long before this day. Honor your mother, honor your home, honor your country, and when you sing with the same heart you had as a little boy standing in our kitchen. The world may not understand our language, but they will understand your sincerity. I love you, Anik. Always. Your papa. The arena fell silent again. Miguel covered his mouth as tears poured down his cheeks. He didn't know the letter existed. He didn't know his father had written something for him before passing away. The judges were stunned. The entire audience was frozen with emotion. Even Terry Crews wiped tears from his eyes. Simon folded the letter carefully, almost reverently, and walked toward the stage. He approached Miguel, kneeling slightly so they were at eye level. Your father believed in you long before the world saw you. And today, you honored everything he taught you. Miguel couldn't speak. He simply nodded as tears rolled down his face. Simon placed his hand gently on Miguel's shoulder. And for that, you deserve something special. The crowd gasped. The judges exchanged confused glances. Everyone knew what was coming, but no one expected it for a national anthem performance. Simon walked back to the panel, took a deep breath, and slammed his hand onto the golden buzzer. Golden confetti exploded from above, falling like shimmering rain. The audience erupted in cheers louder than anything that night. Miguel looked upward, stunned, frozen in disbelief. His small frame shook as he cried openly, letting the confetti fall onto his hair, his hands, his clothes. Terry rushed forward and wrapped him in a big, warm hug. You did it, little man. You honored your whole country tonight. Backstage, staff members cried as they watched. Filipino crew members hugged each other, overwhelmed with pride and nostalgia. Even those who had never heard Lupang Hinirang before found themselves moved in ways they couldn't explain. Simon stood there, looking up at the confetti, feeling something warm inside his chest that he hadn't felt in a long time. A reminder of innocence, a reminder of gratitude, a reminder that some performances aren't about winning or fame, but about heart. Miguel's mother ran onto the stage, tears streaming down her cheeks. She hugged her son so tightly it seemed she would never let go. He held her just as tightly, whispering, Mama, I did it. I did it for Papa. I did it for us. I did it for the Philippines. She kissed his forehead again and again. Your Papa is so proud of you, Anik. So proud. The confetti fell slower now, drifting like Golden snow. Miguel looked at the judges, then at the crowd, then at the lights above. His dream wasn't just achieved, it was honored. His voice didn't just reach the stage, it reached thousands of hearts. And somewhere far beyond the noise, beyond the lights, beyond the world of cameras and applause, his father's words echoed softly around him like a warm embrace. Remember, Anik, wherever you go, honor who you are. That night, millions around the world watched a small Filipino boy remind humanity of something timeless, that love for one's country, one's roots, one's family, can be the most powerful performance of all. And as the video closes, the narrator's voice returns softly, the same gentle tone that opened the story. This is a moment that will be remembered not for fame, not for competition, but for heart. And this channel will continue bringing stories like this, stories that remind us of the beauty of courage, loyalty, and love. If you were moved by Miguel's journey, stay with us. There are many more stories that honor humanity, kindness, and the unspoken strength that lives inside every heart. The screen fades slowly to black as the last lines appear. Filipino kid honors Lupang Hinirang on AGT. A moment that touched the world. A moment that will never be forgotten.